disclosure, I did commit this heinous sin back in high school, but never again. Never again. Hello fellow fic writers, kudos for clicking on this video. My name is Cora Maria and I'm here to help you write and post your dream fanfiction. Author's notes are one of those features that's almost exclusively unique to fanfiction. I consider them part of the charm, but they don't always get the love and attention that they deserve. That's why I'll be delving deeply into the full potential of author's notes. But first, it's time for the Sunday Bar Notice. Here's a bowl of ice cream. Pretend that this bowl of ice cream is your fanfiction. Here is a bar full of toppings. Pretend that these toppings are the advice that I offer in this video. You don't need all the toppings to create the sundae of your dreams, and the same is true of my advice and your fanfiction. What works for me might not work for you, and what works for you might not work for me. The only thing you should prioritize when designing your process is fun, because that's what this hobby is all about. Fun! After all, a pen wields no skill unless the hand that holds it has passion. Prologue. What are author's notes? Author's notes, or ANs for short, are the notes that the author leaves at the beginning or end of their story, sometimes in the middle. But that's a sin that we will pass judgment on later. In short, ANs are how the author communicates with their beloved audience. Chapter 1. How can you use them? Lots and lots and lots of ways. I've tried to list every single thing I could, but please comment anything I may have missed. Page 1. Life updates. Sometimes it's fun to share a little bit of what's going on in your life to build that sense of connection between you and your readers. It can also be helpful to mention if something is affecting your update schedule. Page 2. Behind the screen. Have a fun fact you found in your research? Did something interesting happen as you wrote a chapter? What about an original vision that never made it to the final draft? I love knowing the meta-narrative behind how a story is created, and I'm not the only one. That's why behind-the-scenes content is so popular after all. Page 3. Setting boundaries for commenters. I don't mean stuff like, I won't update until I get 5 comments. That's just entitlement, and it's tacky. I mean things like, please, no constructive criticism, or I don't care if the canon details aren't straight, or even, I welcome all feedback. Most people want to know your boundaries so they know for certain that they aren't going to accidentally tread on your toes. Page 4. Information about your update schedule. I'm a huge proponent of updating consistently. It keeps you accountable, organized, and it gives your readers something to look forward to. ANs are great for explaining when you plan to update, but be sure to promise something you can realistically deliver. Don't promise the next chapter in 2 weeks if it hasn't been written yet. If you have a backlog of 16 chapters, like yours truly, then go right ahead. Page 5. Content warnings and important notices. As hobby writers, sometimes we want to broach topics that are too tricky or extreme for published fiction. Content warnings also aren't normalized in the publishing industry, but they are normalized in fanfiction. But we're often amateurs, and as amateurs, we might struggle to broach certain topics with the right amount of research, or we might not have access to sensitivity readers. That's why it's okay if you need to use author's notes to help you along and minimize the harm your fic might cause. For example, I have a scene in The Magic Awakens that discusses other specified dissociative disorder, and it strays really close to some harmful stereotypes. Though I tried to tread as carefully around it as I could and disprove the stigma, I still knew that some people might miss the point, so I made sure to address the issue in my ANs, stated that my fanfiction should not be an educational resource by any means, and recommended some resources to learn more about OSDD and related disorders. Page 6. Credit where credit is due. If you use an idea from another fanfic or piece of media, ANs are the perfect place to give credit. State the idea you took, the source material, and the creator, and you're golden. Please note that this isn't a get out of jail free card for plagiarism or not significantly changing an idea and making it your own. Page 7. Make some fun jokes! I love when people joke about in their ANs. It's just that whole hate your story out of love thing. Here's an example of an AN I wrote that had someone laughing so hard that their gut hurt. The Magic Awakens, Chapter 19. Disclaimer: there is no COVID-19 in this AU. Page 8. Manage expectations for the next chapter. When you post something chapter by chapter, people who are following along might be frustrated if you imply that characters A and B are about to go on a date in the next chapter, only for your next update actually be about character C visiting character D. That's why it's helpful to give your readers a heads up. Please don't use it to lampshade your terrible pacing or whatever. If it really is a pacing issue, then either fix it or leave it. If you just want to gently shift a reader's expectations, that'll set up the next chapter for a better reception. Page 9. Asking questions to prompt comments. Sometimes people don't comment because they can't think of anything to say. So by asking a question and encouraging people to respond, you're helping them along. To paraphrase Struthless, it's like the difference between a blank page and a page that says, draw an ibis. And finally, page 10. Show appreciation for your readers. Everyone wants to feel appreciated. Authors want to feel appreciated for their writing, and readers want to feel like their interaction is meaningful. It also helps to give an extra bit of love to anyone who favorites, bookmarks, gives kudos or comments on your story. Feel the love, extend it back, and you might just get more in return. How do you like to use author's notes? Ever seen one that particularly tickled your funny bone? Quote them in the comments below. I love author's notes so much, so yes, please share them with me. The best of author's notes. The more chaotic, the better. Chapter 2. Less is more. The truth is that long, rambly, repetitive ANs will usually get skipped. Not by me. I always read the ANs no matter what, but I would appreciate it if you don't, for a lack of a nicer way to say this, waste my time. The key is my copywriting catchphrase: concise and precise. Say as much as you can in as few words as possible. Here's another useful tip. If your chapter ends in an impactful way, leave it at that. I'm serious. If your chapter ends with some big punch to the gut or a cliffhanger, then you do not want to disturb that final impact you've left on the reader. Leave them reeling, leave them wondering, leave them in the dark unknown. Finally, do not leave ANs in the middle of your chapter within the prose itself. At this point, we all know it reads as amateur, but there is a practical reason why you should never, ever do it. It breaks immersion. It reminds the reader that they aren't experiencing the plot with the characters. It's all puppetry by a writer behind the screen. And frankly, you shouldn't ever need an AN in the middle of the story to explain something. Either do it at the beginning or the end if you really have to. Never, ever in the middle. Full disclosure, I did commit this heinous sin back in high school, but never again. Never again. And that's the end of the video. Kudos for watching, kudos for liking, and extra kudos if you've subscribed for more dreamy fanfiction tips. Next video, I'll be covering the odd relationship between fanfiction and point of view. But in the meantime, happy fic writing!